Hello everybody, my name is Catherine O'Rourke, and today I'm going to be going over cohort studies. So I'm going to talk about what a cohort study is, some advantages of them, disadvantages, and I'm also going to go into an example of the Framingham Heart Study, just to further drive home the point. So a cohort study is a study where samples, called cohorts, are followed and evaluated with respect to a disease or outcome to determine which initial participants' risk factors are associated with that disease or outcome. A simple example would be following a group of individuals from birth and noting which individuals use tobacco and how often, then evaluating which individuals get heart disease to attempt to see an association between heart disease and tobacco use. However, an important note is that cohort studies are typically descriptive endometriology and only observe results and don't subject participants to a certain treatment or lifestyle. There are two types of cohort studies, retrospective and prospective. Retrospective cohort studies are when the group or cohort has the disease or outcome, and you're looking back retrospectively into their histories or medical records to identify any risk factors. Prospective cohort studies are what we more commonly think of, and this is when the group or cohort does not have the disease or outcome initially, but are instead followed through a long period of time, and risk factors and exposures are then noted throughout their life. And then it is seen who gets the disease or outcome at the end of the cohort study. There are multiple advantages to cohort studies. First and foremost, they're easier and cheaper than a lot of other trials, such as randomized control trials. They also allow for easy calculations of incidence. And you're allowed to see the long-term effects of certain exposures, and particularly in prospective cohort studies, you can clearly see what exposure occurs first, so your timeline is fully clear within your study. Also in prospective studies, this allows for the examination of multiple effects of a single exposure if this is the case. Of course, there's going to be disadvantages of cohort studies as well. First and foremost, there's no clear cause and effect relationship seen as you do in experimental studies such as case control studies. You instead rely on association to draw your conclusions. But again, this is due to cohort studies largely being a part of descriptive endometriology. You also deal with that there's no randomization, so an imbalance of patient characteristics may exist. Blinding and masking can be very difficult. Also, your outcome of interest may take a while to occur, requiring for potentially large cohorts to need to be followed for a long period of time. Cohort studies are also not good for rare diseases, and particularly in retrospective cohort studies, data or histories may be hard to obtain due to a lack of availability, or if the medical records that are available are not set up ideally to be used in a study. A real-life example of a cohort study is the Framingham Heart Study. This study began in 1948 under direction of the National Heart Institute. It was designed to identify common risk factors for cardiovascular disease, and it followed cardiovascular disease development over a long period of time for 3 generations. The first generation consisted of 5,209 men and women between the ages of 30 and 62, with no prior cardiovascular disease symptoms. This study is actually still going on today, with 2 more generations added, the most recent added in 2003. Analysis of these generations has led to the identification of many risk factors for cardiovascular disease, such as blood pressure, cholesterol levels, age, gender, and psychosocial issues. These crucial findings probably would not be available to us without the use of this cohort study. I hope my presentation helped you better understand cohort studies. To see if it has, take this short quiz and see how you do.